So thanks so much for joining us today, guys, for the final episode of our Resilience webinar series. We're delighted to be joined by Olivia Holbrook today, who's a service designer at Snook Design Studio and former winner of our Where There Is No Engineer design competition. So Olivia is going to be talking today about designing for community resilience and using the example of the Tide Menstrual Toolkit, which she co-founded and co-developed in 2018 while she was studying at TU Dublin. So she's going to be discussing the issue of global period poverty and how participatory design gives an opportunity to build resilience and also an opportunity, really importantly, to tackle the stigma that surrounds menstruation and period poverty. So we're really looking forward to hearing from Olivia today about her journey with the Tide Menstrual Toolkit. She took her from Ireland to Nepal and back, and the lessons that she's learned along the way. But just before I pass over to Olivia, I'm just going to share a quick poll with you guys, which you may be familiar with, that I've shared in the last couple of weeks. It's just really to gain an understanding of where you guys are at in terms of your awareness of the issue of period poverty and also participatory design. So if you can just take a moment to fill in, that'd be great. So I will share it there now. So just two short questions. Okay, so pretty much everyone has voted there now, I think. So just end and share. So so in terms of how many women are affected by a lack of access to sanitary products globally every month, most of you actually got this correct. It is shockingly up to 500 million women. So it just really puts in perspective how huge an issue it is, and that it's global. It's an issue here in, well, where I'm based. Obviously, you guys are joining from around the world, but here in Dublin, in Ireland, it's an issue in the UK, it's an issue in New Zealand, in Asia. It's really a global issue. So that's why we're very excited today to kind of look at Olivia's perspective on tackling it and implementing a solution for women and girls around the world. And then how familiar with community participatory approaches to health? Most of you guys say to some extent, so that's really interesting to know, and hopefully you will gain some interesting insight from Olivia today, just learning how she has how she approached it again in her project and working with her former colleague Rachel. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Olivia there now. So enjoy the webinar, guys, and we'll talk to you after. As normal as well, just to mention for anyone new joined today, we will have a Q&A session once Olivia finishes. So I can unmute you at that point to speak to Olivia, and yeah, we'll look forward to hearing your questions then. Okay, so Olivia, over.
Nice. So sorry, forgive me, I've got two screens, so I might be looking up a bit, but I am just trying to figure out my slides. So I think Emma gave me a nice little introduction there, just to say that I'm a service designer. I work for a design studio in London called Snook. I am a graduate of Dublin Institute of Technology, which has now changed names. But yeah, so I'm just going to try to breeze through this as quick as I can. There's kind of a lot to cover, and I'm going to just give you a real flavor of everything that the process of this project has gone through, but like mainly touching on kind of how we started trying to design a single product, which kind of evolved into looking at how you design for kind of symptoms of a problem as well as tackling a larger problem. So it's not always about necessarily what you design, but how you design it and how you work together to do that. So what it is I'm actually going to be talking about is this. So Tide is a menstrual toolkit. And so I guess it's kind of our solution to period poverty. And what was interesting, like I said, is we started trying to design like a reusable pad or kind of some sort of sustainable tampon. And that's where the project started, but where it kind of ended up is something really different. And that was a result of working with communities, designing with people and not for them. And just, I guess, really letting the research and the work that you do with people inform how you move forward. And so I'm going to try breeze through a bit of the process of kind of where the project started, where it got to, and then I guess some of the top learnings we had from that. So yeah, gonna try to breeze through it as quick as I can. So I guess just to touch on kind of some of those poll questions, why does it matter? Like, why is this such an issue? But I guess just to give you a bit of perspective, you know, half of the population are women, and they're like suffering both physically and mentally. On any given day, over 800 million women have their period. And like during our research of this, I think some of these stats might be slightly out of date because it was from a few years ago, and apologies, I am using some of my older slides. But I think what was really apparent in the research, regardless of figures, is that actually girls are dying from a lack of resources, a lack of knowledge, and a lack of awareness about menstruation. Like in our research, we found that women don't have access to sanitary products or underwear. So they use things like cloths, leaves, rags, and even in some cases, tin cans. And so the impact that has on women is like monumental, both physically in terms of infections, mentally in terms of health and well-being and how you feel about yourself. And so we realized straight away it is a really big issue. Jumping into the process, so I guess how this started and how we, I guess, tried to work in a space where we were working with people with lived experience and letting that inform the work that we were doing. So we started by material testing. We had this kind of idea of, yeah, let's create either a reusable sanitary pad or maybe like a moon cup, which seemed to be like all the rage in Dublin at the time. And so we started doing some material testing, just trying to figure out like what we could do and what's possible. And then I'm just going to highlight some of the kind of key insights of the process that helped us inform the decisions moving forward. So we realized like actually you can't make anything out of a single material because there's no one material that can absorb like liquid, that can make you feel dry, that can stop you leaking. So feels quite obvious now, but it kind of makes sense. But also like a lot of women at the moment are using kind of those non-reusable pads, just disposable ones, which have an adhesive, and you can't use that more than once. So we were kind of thinking, okay, like that's a bit of a design challenge. It can have an adhesive. But I think the biggest thing that was really important is like from the beginning, understanding who you're designing for and what you kind of want out of it. So we were saying like, we don't want this to be a product that you can only use in certain parts of the world, or you can only use if you have access to this or access to that. So we were saying like, actually, however this is made, the material needs to be flexible, it needs to be easily sourced so that no matter where you are in the world, you can use it. And we also did like, I have a picture of it, which I can show later if people are interested, but we did a big journey map of actually what it feels like to like go through the process of actually using a pad, of changing one, and understanding like what are the different kind of cultural elements that might impact that, what are the actions you need to do. And like from that we got some nice insights, kind of just things which really you need to consider about like actually there's a really high risk of contamination if you're trying to change a pad in an area that maybe isn't that clean. But also there's a really big fear of being heard and of being seen. So like understanding that these are kind of challenges people have in this situation means that you can start to design for some of that, and like taking those considerations in early really helped just kind of keep the process on track. So then we took this great idea of our single reusable pad to a young migrant women's group. And so this is a group we kind of convened which had lived experience both from being in period poverty, of being in places where you can't access sanitary towels, but also just like a group of women understanding maybe some of the stigma of what it feels like, both us as the kind of people doing the project, but also the group of women we were with as like women who also experienced it. And I think this was really interesting because it was, again, we opened up a space where like we realized how important it is to open up a safe space where people feel like they can talk and discuss things. And like there's ways to do that which can really help the project, and there was ways to do that which can really hinder. And so we started by saying like, you know, here's some of our experiences, here's what we figured, like we've learned, and here's some of the reasons that we're doing this project. And like immediately, once the kind of women felt like, oh yeah, like this is stuff we're talking about, everyone just opened up, and it was really super helpful. So like being aware of what that environment is you're setting for people is really important. But also these women helped us to realize like, actually, you can't just make a single pad that like a single reusable pad that you just hand to someone and they have to figure out how to use, because how do they wash it? And also like, okay, I might use it once, but if I can't wash it, then I won't use it again. And so like some of the kind of constraints that they helped us realize that we were working in that maybe we didn't see at the time was like, nobody wants to actually like handle blood or touch blood. So like, is there ways that you can conceal that so other people can't see it? And I think a big thing amongst cultural beliefs that we found out is like, actually you need to package blood. If other people see that, like in some cultures that can bring kind of misfortune to you. And so being aware that like, okay, that's something that we want people to be able to feel like they can do with this. And so just understanding lots of people have lots of different cultural beliefs about menstruation. And if we're designing something, it has to cater to all of these. This might not be anyone's like favorite solution to their period. It might not be the best thing that they want to use, but so long as everyone can use it and it's accommodating of all those needs, that was what was really important. And so I think a big thing that we learned as well was like a lot of women and girls don't really get taught that much about this. So we were kind of saying, yeah, let's design a single pad that will work, you know, but actually not having access to sanitary products is just one kind of symptom of a bigger root problem, which is like people are ashamed to talk about menstruation. They don't have education about it. They don't have access to things. And like all of this is kind of a problem that we were like, we can't just tackle one part of it. We have to be able to tackle all of it. And so that kind of helped us really play into like creating this, which I guess looks really complicated, but it's not. It helped us inform how we actually designed the pad itself. And so we were like, okay, we can't just have a pad, we need to have a washing device. Okay, we don't want people to have to kind of touch blood. We want people to be able to package it up if they need to hide it, and they don't want others to see it. Like not everyone can use internal sanitary products, so that's something we can't do. And also like we need to figure out a way to wash it. So that's where the washing device came in. And I won't spend too long going through this, but basically the pad can be folded up when it's not in use. It slides into the gusset of your underwear and it can be packaged up again. And we even kind of decided like, wouldn't it be great if you could sew like a pocket into your underwear so that you can carry kind of clean pads with you if you need to change and people don't have to see it in your hand. And so kind of catering for some of that discretion, as well as creating a bit of a washing device. But I think what was really interesting with these women is they were kind of like, okay, like how are you going to give this to people like in remote communities? Are you just going to hand it to someone and expect them to use it? And I think this is where participatory design comes in quite strongly, is that it's not about us doing something and handing it to someone and saying, amazing, aren't we so great, look what we've done. Like you have to realize when you're working in communities, especially people in vulnerable situations, there's already a bit of a power imbalance and you have to actually be able to address that. So like what could we be doing trying to design something like this that could help so many people in so many places? How do we do that in a way that is empowering and isn't kind of debilitating for people and isn't assuming that we know everything right? And so this was kind of the model we took. We were like, we have the product, we have the thing itself, we know how that will work, but now we need to understand the bigger picture of like, how do communities pick this up? How do women kind of empower each other? How do we introduce an element of it's okay to talk about taboos? How do we introduce an element of like you can do knowledge sharing where you're kind of learning from one another, even if that formal education wasn't given to you? So that's kind of what this diagram is showing, is that we were saying, okay, so if you're going to a region where you know you're going to be working with a remote community, can you source the materials locally? Can you like, are there designated safe spaces within communities that you could be tapping into to say, let's go through these trusted members of the community and talk to them about this kind of work? Like, can we introduce women to these spaces so that they know that they have a place to go to talk about this stuff? But I think the biggest thing we realized as well is like, when you're in, like, especially for me as kind of a design student at the time in university, there's kind of a really big emphasis on this has to be perfect, this has to be beautiful, and like you need to make the nicest design you can. Whereas actually there's some really, really big value if you're working with people and in communities. There's some really big value in frugal design. And what I mean by that is like, you don't need to design something to be beautiful and to be perfect. If you can design it enough to give to people that they can make it their own, that they can make it work for them, that they can have an input and ownership over what's happening, like that's just as valuable as having a perfectly polished product. And so I think that was something that we were really keen to kind of, I guess, bring into this project. So we were saying in these safe spaces, you know, people can come, they can get access to materials, they can sew the pads together, they can build a sense of community where you can do like learning and sharing and kind of exchanging experience. And then also you have something really valuable that you've made that you can go away and use. So that's kind of the process to where we got to of designing and understanding what we needed to do. And we were really fortunate to have won the Where There Is No Engineer competition and to get a development opportunity working with Action Aid Nepal. So we actually had a chance to go out and test this with communities, which I think was really exciting. And like, we had done all this research and we had done all this planning, but it was like, actually, let's go out and see, can we make this work? And does this help people? And we took it as really an action research trip where we wanted to go in and say to people like, this is what we're trying to do, but we want it to be yours. We want you to kind of own this and work on it with us. And I think our aim was kind of, you know, talking to more women, continue testing, but we had like a set of principles that we wanted it to be reusable, we wanted it to be educational, we wanted it to be safe, and we wanted it to be universal. So I think all really, really valuable things, but yeah, I guess, again, just not giving someone something that they have to just use because it's their only option, but helping people like empower themselves to design what they need, or to, you know, feel safe using something. And I guess there's a bigger element to play at that. But so I guess diving into the actual aspect of working with communities, I'm going to just talk through a little bit of what we did in Nepal, and some of my top learnings from it, which I think was it was a really amazing trip to do. But also just some, I guess I'll mention a few things of like important things to remember if you're working kind of through like with participatory design methods or working with communities, things that are useful to consider. So we went out to rural Chitwan in Nepal. And so these are the kind of places that we were meeting. We did, I think it was 6 women's group sessions. And I think what was really important about these sessions is like the way that we planned them, I guess. We were, again, like I said, there's a bit of a power imbalance. Knowing that you're coming in to kind of share what you've worked on, and people are there to listen, you have to be aware like they're giving up their time to talk to you. There may be power imbalances already. How can you address those, and how can you make that equal and feel like people empower people to want to be there and to want to kind of help you in what you're doing. And so the way that we shaped these women's sessions, I think, was really crucial to those type of principles of empowerment and working with people and not working for them. So we would start with a quick introduction, and I think this is like, usually in the beginning it was a bit frosty because everyone was a bit like, oh, why are you here? What are we doing? But I think what was really valuable is we worked through what they call social mobilizers in the community. So these are almost people who are trusted members of the community that kind of act on behalf of the community to bring people in, to provide like resources that people need. So they're kind of like an outstanding member that helps support the community in a way. And so by us working with those people, it meant that we could come in, already have a sense of trust because we're working with people that they recognize and they know and they trust. And yeah, I think it was just really helpful, again, even for translation, because we didn't speak Nepali. But we started the sessions after the introduction by problem sharing. So actually like setting that space, making it safe, saying to women like, tell us everything that you experienced, tell us like what would help you, like what's been a challenge. And like sometimes people weren't that open to speak, but it was kind of a domino effect of once one person spoke and we kind of had a chat, then someone else joined in, someone else joined in, to the point where you're all just like really engaged in a conversation. And then like we would kind of share as well, we'd share some of our experiences, we would share kind of the drivers of why we wanted to do this project and why we were here. But then what was really great is kind of like, okay, enough talking. And we'd say, we have all this material, we have an idea of how we want to make these. This is how we would make one. Like, what do you guys think? And we would just like get sewing in it. I think it was really nice as well, because in design, a lot of the times they say like, you know, communication is key, and you think of like visual communication and verbal communication, but this was a lot of like actually doing and seeing. And so I didn't have to speak the language to know to say to someone like, whoa, you're really good at sewing, that looks amazing, like keep going. And like what was really nice to see was like we had 6 women's sessions, and all of these women took the design and they moved it in slightly different directions. They started to say, okay, oh, well, we have old umbrellas, we can use that material to make new pads. Oh, we have an old rice cooker, we can use that as a washing device. And so actually just giving people, like I said, that the basis of what they need to design something and the opportunity to do it. And they can, as a community, figure out what works for them. I think that was amazing. And again, so like when you're doing this kind of activity of actually doing something, you are sharing experience. And like what was really amazing to see, especially among the Nepalese people, was they're all really good at sewing. They're like absolutely fantastic at it, like much better than myself or Rachel were. But they just never thought to layer things up, to sew them together and to try different materials. And so it was just us saying like, oh, hey, this is how we've done it. And they were kind of able to like run with that and actually improve the design because they're so much better at sewing than we were. And then again, like at the end, it was really nice just to see people were able to like joke, like we were putting underwear on our head and like we got some testimonials from people just to ask them, like, has this been beneficial? Has this helped you at all? And like, honestly, some of the responses we got were just really, really heartwarming, because people were saying like, just being given the chance to kind of talk this way, and like there was a very nice sense of empowerment from women. But I guess some of the biggest reflections that I found from the trip is like, putting the time into thinking about the ways that you do things really has an impact on how you do them. Not assuming anything, but actually going out and asking people and working with them and having that input lead the way. I think we had a lot of assumptions going into this trip, and I think a lot of them were proved wrong. So like the first picture, this is someone like adapting the design and doing it their own way. And I was like, that's so nice to see, is that like, we were afraid that, you know, we'd come, we'd show them something and like we'd leave and it would just die. And that's fine if that did happen, but it was something we were conscious of. But actually, like, people took ownership of it. They kind of ran with it. They used it in a way that worked for them. In the second picture, you can see some of the men started to join in. So we were definitely afraid that like such a taboo topic, you know, and in some of the cultures we visited, like the society is very much dominated by men, and what they say goes. So we were definitely nervous about like, are we putting people in danger by doing this, bringing them together to talk about something? But it was really nice to see, actually, like, if you set the condition for the conversation, people can have really open, normalized conversations about things like this. And like the men even were like, oh, my wife might want one. And so then they started to make them, and it felt like less of a big deal, because it wasn't hush hush and secret. It was just something we were doing. And because it was quite normalized, it felt a bit more accessible to people. And even on the right is she's kind of the head of the social mobilizers. So she came with us everywhere. And she was even like, this is something I want to use. So it's like going back to that idea of like, if you make something that works for everyone, and you make something so good that people, like, everyone will want to use it. So it's kind of, I don't know, don't be designing just for people in certain conditions. Design for as many people as you can, and like let them kind of guide what you're doing. And then you never know who's going to pick it up and who's going to run with it. And I think like just some of the biggest learnings that I have from this whole action research trip is like, if you're working in communities, like, just be aware of what the challenges are you're going to have. You're going to be in remote places. There's going to be language barriers. And especially like with this, where you're talking about really taboo things, and plan for that. Like, you shouldn't expect people to kind of meet you where you are. You should do your best to meet them where they are and fill in some of those gaps to support people in doing what they are doing. Yeah, hang on. I think, what else did I have? Design with people, not for them. So I think a lot of the times, what I mean by that is, don't design in isolation. The more people that you can get involved with lived experience, the better. And actually listening to them and doing your best to empower them to do the work with you, as opposed to doing things for people, bringing it to them and saying, would you use this? Yes or no. It's kind of like, how would you use this? How can we do this together? How can we change this? And I think as well, not just looking at the symptom of a problem, but looking at the root problem itself. So not just giving people pads, but creating a space where they can talk about it, creating a space where they can like learn from one another, creating a space where they can make things that they use themselves, and giving, like, just helping guide them in doing that, because they have all the knowledge and the skills themselves to input into it. Yeah, I think that's everything about just empowering people and stuff. So I'm not sure. I feel like that was a bit rambly. I hope I covered enough, but I was hoping to just kind of get through and take any questions, because there's lots more I could talk about. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Olivia. Thanks so much for that. That's brilliant. Now that we have time for questions from from our attendees, and actually then I'll just maybe just before we finish up, just have a quick finishing poll as well. So actually, maybe just while you guys take a moment to think about questions, I'll just launch that there now. So it's really just to see, what you guys have taken from it in terms of, understanding of period poverty. And obviously a lot of you, Joanne, you're very familiar with design, but any kind of like new ideas that maybe it's sparked for you, or new ways of approaching, or kind of that it's maybe even elucidated kind of challenges for you. So we'll just launch that there now. And if you guys could take a moment to answer, that would be great. And if you want to then just share your question, and I'll be able to unmute you to talk to Olivia. Oh, we have one already, I think. Oh yeah, so Tracey, I will unmute you there now. Actually, maybe Tracey, if we just wait 1 second, and I'll just kind of close off the polling, and then I'll fly over to you. Cool. So we've got pretty much everyone there now has voted. So great to see that the aim has been achieved. Thanks guys for showing that. Yet that you feel that you have better understanding and more informed about participatory design. And I think that definitely, and even in my experience before working in communities, there's huge challenges associated, but I think there's great, the benefits are huge, and it's really for, and it's for everyone. As Olivia said, it's also for you. You grow as a person yourself. If you're a designer, you grow as a designer. And kind of challenging and questioning your own assumptions. It's actually really rewarding when you see that kind of change within yourself and how you progress. So hopefully that's been something interesting for you guys to reflect on as well. So Tracey, I will fly over to you there now. Make sure just stop the results there. Now, so. Okay, Tracey, so you should be able to talk there now.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, Tracey, yeah.
Okay, great. So I was just interested in, what stage are you at post-design? Are these products widely available, or are you still in the manufacturing piece of this, or are the products being distributed now, and where are they being distributed, or are you still just at the design phase?
So challenging question, but I would say we're not at the design phase anymore, because I guess we've designed it to a point where it can be taken by other people and used in a way that they need and see fit. In terms of like manufacture and distribution, I think it's something that we've been grappling with, because a lot of people have said to us like, oh, you should start manufacturing these and getting them out to people. But I think like there's a lot of options for reusable pads out there, maybe not all with the washing device, but I think we've got to a stage where what we want to do is build the community around it. And what we want to do is, it's not so much about manufacturing the products, but it's about sourcing the materials, setting up the communities, and building that sense of ownership within a group of women and girls to do it themselves. And so where we're at currently is, I think a really big learning, which I didn't mention, is before the action research trip, we never really set any baseline measurements of how we measure success with this, apart from the fact that we now have 6 different communities of women using this in slightly different ways and adapting it. But yeah, so I think like going forward, that's something we need to kind of consider, is like how we do this again and how we measure for success and how we improve based on that. And also should say, being very grateful to receive a second set of funding from the Shuttleworth Foundation, just as a grant, kind of for a flash grant for kind of reward as doing social good. So that was really useful, and I'm hoping to put that into kind of understanding how we can go into communities and build it up that way, as opposed to sending out manufactured products.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Something we're looking at doing is getting it on the open source list, which means that no one else can copyright it to make money off it. So usually that's a good way of reaching out to communities and saying, hey, have you seen this on the open source list? It's something that you guys could benefit from. And so hopefully building out a network that way, but hard when you have a full-time job as well.
Indeed. Yeah, it's very important to mention that this is a side project for Olivia. So obviously time is a huge challenge in and of itself. But yeah, I will just fly over now to Angelique. I think wanted to ask a question. So Angelique, I'll meet you there now. Okay, you should be able to talk now, Angelique, if you want.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Hi there. I just wanted to, with the previous lady, kind of touched a little bit on that. Where would it be available? Because when the reusable pads was advertised on Facebook, I then sent a link out to all of the women I knew to say that it is available, because obviously it's a source of pollution and microplastics and all of those things. So I just wanted to inform other women it was available. And I was surprised that one of the ladies that I spoke to kind of said that she wouldn't want to use it because, and to use her words, the thought of putting the pad in her washing machine was icky. So that device, where it's an option. So people, what I have discovered even in my own research project and watching certain documentaries, people, what you design something for, sometimes how people interact with even the knowledge can sometimes have you don't always know how they're going to react. So fair play and very good for designing this. Obviously, for women who do not want to put them in their washing machines, it certainly could be another option. So it's something to think about. I know you said you didn't want to commercial and produce, but even women in, let's say, the Western world can certainly benefit from this as well. So it's just something to think about. And then one of the things that you said in the beginning of your presentation kind of resonated with me. And I just wanted to say how easily one can assume people know things. They did some work in communities where I had lived, trying to explain to people how to use condoms. And they used a broom to show the people how to put it on. And a few months later, they had done a survey again, and one of the ladies had become pregnant. And they asked the husband, but did you not use it? He said, yes, I put it on the broom. So I think that sometimes we assume people understanding exactly what we want them to do. So it's just something to consider. As a bit of information there.
And I think that goes two ways as well. Is like a big thing. Obviously, I mentioned kind of power dynamics in this and understanding where the power balance is between you and people you're working with, and like trying to address that through how you do things. I think it's the same with like assumptions, biases, privileges. Is like when we first went to speak to that group of women, we were kind of like, yeah, we've made a pad, it's great. And they were like, how do you wash it? And like that was something that didn't even occur to us because we were like, oh, well, it's such a privilege for us. We have a washing machine or a sink or, you know, a shower or a bath. I have multiple ways I can do that. But they were just like, yeah, if you are, you know, living in a hut in the middle of nowhere and access to water is miles away, and you can't take, like, for fear of kind of sexual gender-based violence, you can't just take something like this out into the open. Like, how do you do that from home? And so it was like, I think it happens both ways, that we assume things of people and they assume things of us. And I think, yeah, having like, again, comes back to the point of just being able to have those conversations really is valuable, both for the learning in yourself and also learning about like other people's cultures, communities, and working with them and not kind of for them, and just letting those assumptions lead the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very much for
thanks very much.
Angelique. Thanks, Angelique. Yeah, absolutely. This is it. The participatory design really allows that like two-way conversation. The best thing that obviously we just learn about each other, breaking down assumptions is really the first step for making the progress, obviously, and being able to design something that truly is being beneficial. Because, you know, we all, you know, we've all grown up with our sort of set of experiences in a certain context, and the only way that you can change that is by, you know, interacting with others. You know, as you said, also maybe kind of being, you know, going out of your comfort zone, and yeah, and the learning that comes from that. So it's just a comment there from Nagarajan. I will share the recording afterwards with you guys, Nagarajan, the YouTube recording once I have it up. So you'll be able to, to note the questions and answer session from that. Are there any other questions at the moment, guys? Or any other comments indeed that anyone would like to share? No. Okay, good. Well, if not, then thank you so much, guys. And a huge thanks to Olivia for joining us today. Thanks very much, Tracey. And definitely, and thanks so much to everyone who has been joining us over these last weeks and months as well, as we've been running this resilience webinar series. And also a huge shout out again to everyone who has volunteered their time to host a webinar for us. And people have done this voluntarily alongside their jobs, so we hugely appreciate their time and contribution. I'm delighted that we could end with Olivia today, also one of our someone that we've worked with closely in Engineers Without Borders. So thank you, Olivia. And you know, we really have, I suppose, crafted this series that each webinar has kind of been like a snapshot of an area or topic and an introduction to it. And that then it's an invitation to go off and explore and maybe research and critique it even obviously further. So we hope that for you guys it's been interesting, for those who've been joining us along the way, and that you have taken something from it, and maybe you have taken the opportunity to go off and explore issues for either personal or professional or both reasons. And as with obviously the name of the series, resilience has been the overarching theme that's been connecting all of our webinars since June. And with the times that we're living through now, it's really showing and proving just how important it is to have resilient systems, communities, and individuals. And I know for me, it's this series has been great for me to be able to just slow down in my everyday working life and be able to just question things and rethink things. And I think it's really important to carve out that space for us to be able to reflect. It's kind of interesting that resilience, if you look at the definition, you know, it's like how we kind of respond quickly to things. But I think sometimes that actually we need to really take time to slow down, to rethink, to respond more effectively. And I think although it's an incredibly difficult time that we're living through at the moment in terms of facing, you know, dual crises of climate emergency and also the COVID-19 pandemic, it offers a huge opportunity for us to kind of break away from old thinking and just question and rethink and, you know, try to embrace social, economic and environmental change. We've tried to address kind of throughout our series along the way. And that's really from an individual to collective level, as something that, you know, Olivia touched on today, you know, that at an individual level, whether it's, you know, looking at rewilding your home or your public space where you live, you know, right up to how you challenge unjust economic systems and that you can make a difference as a person and kind of spark others to get engaged. You know, there's huge value in engaging individually as well as kind of communities and then at a collective level. So thank you very much for joining us on this journey, guys. And I would love to be able to see you all to wave you off in person, but I will do it into the virtual ether. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we hope that you stay safe and well and take care. And if you would like to keep in touch with us at Engineers Without Borders, I'm just going to put my email address in the chat box here now. So do feel free to keep in touch with me. There's my email. And yeah, and if you haven't also seen our website, it's ewbireland.org if you want to check us out and find out more about where there is no engineer design competition that we were talking about there that Olivia took part in. But yeah, I'd be very happy to keep the conversation going with you guys and any other feedback or thoughts that you have. So I will let you go. And yeah, once more, just saying take care and thanks again for all your support, guys. Okay, and thank you, Olivia. Bye, guys. Thanks, guys.